Hey guys, thanks for joining us. Today we are going to talk about lower extremity issues, most commonly in the foot, and the most common thing that I take care of is something called plantar fasciitis. So not too many people know we take care of extremities, not just the spinal issues, but it is a very common thing here. And you know, a lot of times when people are trying to prevent going to surgery for their plantar fascia, this is a very good conservative alternative. So let's get to it. So what is plantar fasciitis? It is a strain, it is an inflammation, a potential tear, if you will, of the thick, tough, fibrous tissue on the bottom part of the foot. So what starts to happen is, again, the most common reason for heel pain is plantar fascia, or plantar fasciitis, excuse me. And what you'll hear people say when they have it is, they'll say, as soon as I put my foot down in the morning getting out of bed, as soon as my foot lands on the floor, it sends shockwaves through their body. That is by far the most common symptom you would actually hear, where that's the most excruciating point. But that being said, that's what it is. The other thing that you'll actually have some symptoms is just calcaneal tenderness. The heel is tender. You'll have some swelling potentially, and then the other things that could be causing it, one is something called leg length discrepancy. Okay, you could have been born in something of a congenital nature where one foot is shorter than the other, which can throw off your mechanics. More commonly, in my opinion, it'd be something of an acquired leg length discrepancy where maybe one set of muscles is weak, where the other ones are chronically tight and kind of throws your hips off, and it basically throws you into a misalignment. That could can cause some faulty mechanics down what we call down the kinetic chain. It could be something called femoral anteversion, where the femur bone actually rotates inward, and when it does, you'll notice that the toe, or the knee and the toe, is actually pointing inwards, kind of basically pigeon-toed. But in my opinion, the most common reason would be something called excessive pronation, excessive foot pronation. So what's that? That's just a fancy way to say, you know what, you have really flat feet. Okay. Now, your foot should pronate, where all of a sudden it flattens out, but it's when there's an excessive pronation that you don't have an arch that unfortunately causes you to have a potential for having plantar fasciitis. So let's talk about the arch, because there's not just one arch, there's actually three arches in the bottom of the feet. Okay, so this is our right foot here. Okay, so this is the inside part, or the medial part. Here's the lateral part. Okay, there's the ankle part where you mostly, when you roll your ankle, that you injure, okay, and sprain. So when I do this, you have the medial longitudinal arch, you have a lateral longitudinal arch, you have a transverse arch, and those three basically work in tandem and work in unison together to provide good, proper mechanics of the tarsal bones in the foot and ankle so that everything is working correctly. So the function of those arches is, one, shock absorption. When you are walking and going through what we call your gait cycle, when you hit the ground, okay, on heel strike, what happens is as you hit, all of a sudden those arches act like a spring and they lengthen to basically act as a shock absorption, so that way your foot expands. What the next thing it does is basically it supports your body weight, so that's another function of those arches. And then the last thing that those arches do is it actually, they get rigid and tight and they propel you forward. So it kind of acts as a propulsion mechanism. Okay, so if you think of it this way, you got heel strike, okay, and then in this part of the gait cycle, and the phase is mid stance, where your foot is flat, the arch is basically flattened out, and then as the body weight shifts over that ankle, then all of a sudden the foot becomes rigid and tight, and then all of a sudden the ligaments almost act like a spring and then get really tight and rigid and propel you forward on what we call toe off. So those are your functions of the arches. Now, what starts to happen when, again, those mechanics in the foot and the bones in the foot are not working correctly, and you're having these faulty mechanics here, potentially you can have a heel spur. If you look there in the fibrous tissue that I'm talking about, that's most commonly where the heel will grow. But your pain points, and this is the more common and important for you guys to know, your pain points are going to be on the medial part or the inside part of the ankle, okay, the inside part of the knee, okay, so right about here where the knee is, okay, the outside part of the hip, and lastly, your what we call your sacroiliac joint, okay, so there's your tailbone or your sacrum, there's your ilium, so the joint right here, okay, that's another potential part that could be faulty right now due to your flat-footedness and your plantar fasciitis. So there's a lot of things going on, and that's basically how we go about looking at, assessing, examining, and taking care of something that we know as plantar fasciitis. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you do, like it. If you really like it, tell your friends and family, and you can share it with them. And if you have any questions, you can give us a call, or you can drop a line on this thread. So thank you very much, and take care. Bye-bye.